Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of a Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Hello, everybody.
Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. So it's all about giving you lots of ideas as a professional to help you make choices in your classroom for the betterment of your students. And we hope to open some doors for you today. Welcome, newcomers, and hope you enjoy our podcast today. Now, Sharon, our chatty ramble for today.
Yes.
We went to a art exhibition.
Oh, I know. Wasn't that just brilliant?
It was. What was the most brilliant thing for you? Okay.
Oh, now this is sounding like, I'm just thinking about how we were having conversations as a family the other day and asking, all those questions. What was the most interesting? What was the most frustrating? What was the most... I can't even remember what they all were, but we were having a good laugh, weren't we, about all the different kinds of questions that we keep asking. But this was the Van Gogh Alive exhibition that I know has been touring the world, but it's been in Adelaide for the last, I want to say, a couple of months, because actually we went into lockdown not long after it opened up. So as that visual, like this, the size of that space that you enter into with all of those screens projecting different, close-ups and, focusing on different parts of Van Gogh's work in different categories and through his life, with quotes, with music attached to that. So it's a really multi-sensory experience. I found it really very moving and insightful. Gave me a lot more information into really about him as a person.
I kept wondering about him and what he would make of the exhibition because he only sold 3 paintings in his lifetime. And to be this famous now is just incredible, And
which is a very familiar story, isn't it, for particularly artists, that in their lifetimes they aren't maybe aren't as valued or acknowledged. He was one of the most prolific artists of his time, 2,000 paintings in a 10-year period, which is, just gives us indication of the measure of how much he had within him that he really wanted to share with the world.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Well worth going to if it comes to your city. Key question number 1, Sharon. What are some things you've been doing in schools this week?
Yes. Well, 2 big things that have been going on. One, of course, has been working with the project schools, Be Brave and Lead and Be Fearless and Lead schools, where we just continue to really drive for change and consistency and results through really, developing really powerful learners, both at leadership level, at teacher level, and at student level, so that we're really chasing down that powerful learning and joy of learning, teaching and learning. And the other really wonderful thing that I have just been thriving on with some of the schools within the project and one school not in the project, where we've been working on really developing as a school site their English curriculum so that we are really in a great place to be able to be ready for the new school year by mapping out, the content across reading and writing and spelling in ways where we can really feel secure about what it is that we are covering and chasing down and delivering to our students across the English curriculum.
We were talking the other day about the process of writing a curriculum to do with reading, writing and word work or spelling. That process is really important, just as important as what you come up with.
Yes. So what I've loved about the process is that it isn't that, schools are just being handed something and said, okay, well, this is what you're going to do. The joy of it really has been, it has been joyful, but the power of it, of course, is sitting with leadership and the team to have people owning that curriculum and what does that mean for a school to make those decisions about how much, time allocations, resourcing, all of those things that schools need to take ownership of to make it right for their school.
And I guess they get a deeper understanding of the Australian curriculum.
Yes.
Or whatever curriculum you're following around the world.
Yes.
By just writing that out, you are getting a much deeper picture of what's going on and how it's going to affect you in the coming year. Yep.
That's right. So, big shout out to Mount Barker South Primary School. They have a system where they have what's called a literacy action team. So for each of for R1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, well, what's currently 6, 7, there is a representative from each of those year levels that form the literacy action team. Plus there is like the literacy lead teacher and the principal. And so the 7 of us sat for the day mapping out just the word work component of that and typing that up as the document for Mount Barker South Primary School. So with changeover of staff and with people changing year levels, all of those things that frequently happen in schools, it gives such a good foundation and a good statement piece around this is us at Mount Barker South with the Australian curriculum chasing down all of that great work around the literacy.
And a school can do this happily on their own, or they can be with a group of schools that is, each of them are doing this, but then they can come together for meetings to share what they're doing. That's another way to look at it too, isn't it?
Yeah. It wouldn't have to be done in isolation, but there's certainly been great power in, because this is a school that's part of the project. This is on the back of their part of their literacy action team members and leadership being part of all of these sessions over the last 2 years. So, it's a great place for them to be sitting in to now really be feeling strong and motivated around what it is that they are and knowledgeable about what it is that they're teaching and delivering in that English program.
Now, Sharon, I think you know a lot more about the topic today that we're going to talk about than I do. It's just so unusual. But celebrating literature with heart. Please explain.
So wanted to bring some more literature into people's lives again. I've said this in many podcasts, that really literature is about bringing to our students text that allows us to learn more about our world and ourself and others. And so literature is that piece that does that can really, and authors can say that in ways that is much harder for us to be able to do sensitively and thoughtfully and insightfully. So I did go searching for books that I thought were were just great books that could link in to the kinds of things that where we could use literature to really bring some of these big ideas to our students. And so I had a bit of a lens where I went looking, and I did use Akara as my lens to think about what would it be that I would want to bring? What am I looking for in these books? So in the Australian curriculum English, it talks about that we would be choosing texts to work with our students that have potential for enriching the lives of students, that expand their scope of experience, and books that represent effective and interesting features of form and style. So that was one of my lens. Do you say one of my lens? One of my lenses.
Lenses.
one of the things that I was looking for. So Akara also says that we learn to appreciate literary texts and create our own literary texts by understanding the human experience and really developing our capacity for language to deepen those experiences. So once again, that was another thing that I was really looking for, is how are these deepening our own experiences and, with language that would do that. Akara also says 3 more points, that we want to be looking for literature that builds students' knowledge about how language can be used for its aesthetic end, and to create particular emotional, intellectual or philosophical effects. And we might go, surely for younger children we're not thinking of that, but in fact today I am going to focus in on some books that are for probably our first 4 years of school, some picture books, and these are the books that, as Akara continues to say, that students, we want to bring texts where students can interpret, appreciate, evaluate and create their own texts in response to this, to see the power of what can be written for them to be able to also create their own messages. And so we're also looking for texts that have enduring artistic and cultural value. So with all of those things in mind, and whenever I do go book shopping, but I have to say that this time I went book shopping online. So the difference for that, of course, is I can't pick up all of those books and see everything inside, can't read all of it. So I really want to talk a little bit about this experience of going looking for books. I've used that as the lens to get there, and I want to share, I came across a particular publisher who, and I'm not saying these are the only books that do this, but I wanted to really share with everybody how this publisher who, so it's Exile Publishing, but they have as part of their imprint what's called EK Books, so capital E, capital K Books. And their background is that a lot of these books, the authors and illustrators of these books, many of them have teaching backgrounds or psychology backgrounds. They focus on unpacking complex issues to make engaging and relatable texts for some of our youngest readers. And what really then, through the website, what got me into being able to go exploring, and so through my explorations I was able to find some categories where I thought, I'm interested in these. One was about raising writers, environmental empathy, coping with change, and embracing differences. So with plenty of information from each of those books, I just chose a selection based on what I thought that I would love to bring to classrooms that I work with. So that's what have we called it? Right back here again.
Celebrating literature with heart.
So you can probably see where the with heart comes from, because it is done. In fact, EK books talk about their byline is really books with heart on issues that matter. So what was important for me about dipping into these books and having a look at them? So I've got a bundle. I've actually got 8 books here today that I'd just love to share why I chose them, what they're about, and what they bring for children. So, and I think it's important to say they're books with heart, because it is all about, it's about the affective. It is about the, if we talk about literature being there to help us learn more about our world and ourselves and others, then it is about heart. How does that sound, Phil?
Sounds great. So our first book is?
Okay, so I've done a little bit about, I've sorted them a little bit according to the categories that EK Books does. So firstly, I've chosen 2 books that are from the Raising Writers category. And the first one is called This Is Not a Book by Kelly Burns and Asker. Now, this one, so in talking about what categories it fits under, it says storytelling, narrative structure, and adventure. So the blurb on this one says, don't say I didn't warn you. If you've picked this up thinking you're going to read a book, well, you're wrong. There's no plot, no action, no problems to solve. There's not even a main character. I keep trying to tell everybody that this isn't a book, but no one's listening to me. Oh, come on, not you too. Stop it. Don't you dare open this collection of pages and start reading. And of course, it's this wonderful story of saying it isn't a book because it doesn't have all those narrative elements, when in fact that's exactly what it is. So it's a whole lot of fun. Starts off, how could this be a book? I'm real, can't you tell? Besides, where are the pages? All books have pages. If there were pages around here, I'd notice, because when you turn one, things change. And on it goes with this gorgeous character who goes through the whole adventure trying to convince us that this isn't a book. But of course, we meet all kinds of characters. There's action galore, there's problems to solve, and it's entirely a book. And of course, children engage and interact with it in such a wonderful way because they keep saying, but it is a book. It's got all the elements of a book, whilst the main character's trying to convince us that it isn't a book. So it is such a lot of fun, and I love how it takes it from the angle of it's not a book, so that when we're looking at it, children are actually getting a much stronger sense of what makes a story than if that wasn't being put forward. So this is not a book.
Fantastic.
I love it from its beautifully illustrated, loads of fun, and every time I've used that with younger students, they just can't get enough of telling you, but it is a book. It really is a book, and it's got a story, and there's characters. It's got everything that a good story will make.
I can imagine it could lead to writing too.
Oh, and that's exactly right. Just by saying, I remember years ago, when probably in the 80s, 90s, when we sort of started talking about that real critical thinking and sometimes getting our students to write in the negative of something. So where we might have had them writing about, what did you do on the weekend? Tell us what you didn't do on the weekend. And sometimes thinking about what we didn't do is a whole lot more fun and creative than what we did do. So that's exactly what this book does. This is not a book. Actually makes us think, oh yeah, what does make a book? And what are all those elements here that we can notice and find? Now, the second one in that category that they call about raising writers is called The Art of Words by Robert Vescio and Joanna Bartel. So this book is just a wonderful exploration of words. And I actually want to read this book because it's short and powerful, beautifully illustrated again. You won't be able to see it, but you'll be able to hear that we find out about punctuation, we find out about the importance of words, but this one's called The Art of Words. Words. They are found in between the pages of this book. And on this page we've got a dog who is with a pair of binoculars looking over the letter W in words. Looks like it wants to jump through the zero. Is scratching around on the letter R, has the D hanging from its tail, and has the S in its mouth. So there we've got all the letters from words. So words are in the pages of this book. Here, there, everywhere. Some words are big, some words are little, others are colourful, some are ugly. They can be shortened, they can be extended. A few wow in reverse. Or simply trust and never doubt because they stand for something. Sometimes they need a friend, a question mark for words that ask, a comma for words that pause or list, an exclamation mark for words that shout, and a full stop for words that end or abbreviate. They are fun to create, free to collect. Many are brilliant or plain, but best of all, words string together like droplets of dew on a silky web and shape the heart with happiness through stories, one word at a time. Such a lovely way to just introduce that interest and love and wonder and enjoyment and thrill of words. Can you imagine starting with that, opening up that whole world around words, and not just from all of its, like what are words? Sometimes we can get maybe a bit technical about it, but what about the wonder of words? That's what I think that book's really doing, is let us just fly into the wonder and joy and excitement of words, no matter what age we're working with.
No. And one thing we're not seeing here is the illustrations, but on our show notes you'll be able to link to all of these books and see at least the covers.
Yes. And if you want to explore on the website, I think you can go into some of the books you can see inside.
Okay.
And actually The Art of Words on Exile's website, the author, Robert Vescio, actually reads that aloud on the website.
Lovely.
So you can see the whole book.
Yep. And while we're on this, Sharon, there are sometimes on YouTube you can see books that are being read. But one of your recommendations is to let that run, but then the teacher uses their own voice to read the book rather than
mute.
Don't listen to the audio that's already on it. Do your own voice. Why do you recommend that?
Because you're the most important reader in the room, bringing that book alive.
Thank you, Sharon. Oh, you mean everyone else? Yeah, sure.
Never miss an opportunity there, Phil. It is. I really think you are the one, as teacher, you are the one who needs to bring that book alive for your students.
Because you mean the most to them.
You mean the most, and you know how you should read that for them. If you want to know, and that's actually one of the other reasons why some of these books I am reading today, even though listeners can't see them, it is about our delivery of it. We need to read aloud needs to mean something. And as Allington talks about, every child every day should hear a fluent adult read, and that means hearing it in the way that brings text alive. So I'm not saying that people who are reading books on, and if we have a YouTube clip or something of that book, I'm not saying they're not bringing it alive, but you as teacher are the one to bring that alive for your students. There will be a much stronger connection for that. It also means that if you're running it, or if you're muting it, and then just pause where you want. There are some pages you'll want to have some time to look further at. So that's where we also recommend that you wouldn't have a clip where the camera is panning over the page. We just want it still. We just want to see the page. We want to let students in on that page. But I have to love that the teachers that I work with, whenever I talk about, you could find it on YouTube and use in that way, and they go, no, we need the hard copy. We want it in our classrooms, and I couldn't agree more. We actually, the most important piece is to have
the real book.
Yeah, and accessible, so students have got that whenever they need.
Sorry, I digressed, Sharon.
You did, importantly. All right, so next category, coping with change. So I've chosen 2 books from the coping with change category, and the first one's called Upside Down Friday. This one is about coping with change, anxiety, and school. So Hugo doesn't like upside down Fridays. The day is the wrong way round. So every Friday, because they have sport, it means that lunchtime is at morning tea time, and all his classmates' smiles look like frowns. So will Hugo learn to tame the butterflies in his tummy and find the fun in days that don't go to plan? So beautifully illustrated. This one's written by Lana Spazewski, illustrated by Nikki Johnston. And our character here, Hugo, is a very cheeky monkey. So in here, all our characters happen to be, not all monkeys. We have a whole range of animals in this one. So it's nice. It's kind of like one step removed again. So we don't have, so for children who are feeling this, we can see ourselves in this, but we can also understand that it might not just be us that has this. Monkeys can have this anxiety too, or so if monkeys can, then other people can. I really like that shift from, sometimes it's animals that can bring us that other perspective around how we might be feeling. So in this story we have, of course, a lovely resolution where Madison, a very friendly giraffe, steps in and finds a way to solve, or not to solve, to empathise with Hugo, to say that she also used to feel that way. And she has a way to make him feel better and gives him a little symbol of something that in here it happens to be a red balloon. And through that red balloon, he feels a lightness and can feel that he can overcome what seems like a hard thing, the upside down Fridays. So lovely, isn't it?
Lovely. Beautiful
Illustrations, soft and muted and friendly and heartwarming.
Yeah, I was going to say animals are great for children to identify with, and also puppets. Might be something else you could use as well.
Yes. Yep. Actually, I'm thinking of Cheryl. Cheryl will know who she is if she's listening. The importance of puppets is powerful in being able to have another voice from somewhere else, from someone else, someone outside of us who is speaking to us.
And you could, in fact, make simple puppets of characters from the book.
Yes, you could. Right, another one in this category of coping with change is called Pair of Hope. This one's by Wenda Shorty and illustrated by Deb Hudson. So this one deals with coping with illness, cancer, resilience, and hope. So this one called Pair of Hope, at the back of this book, I like how they've given the explanation of the symbolism of the pair and so why they have used. So I like this, that we bring in, it's not just pair for a random reason, but in many parts of the world, the pear symbolises the human heart because of its similar shape. The ancient Chinese believed that the pear was a symbol of immortality and that the pear tree symbolised long life and good fortune. Similarly, in Christianity, the pear tree is said to symbolise the promise of eternal life. In Korea, the pear tree is a symbol of comfort and is said to give wisdom and health. So in this story, Anna loves the old pear tree at the bottom of her garden. When she becomes seriously ill, the tree gives her comfort and strength, especially when she plants a seed from one of the tree's pears. So told through sensitive words and beautiful illustrations, this is a story of hope for any child who might be struggling to feel positive, whatever journey they might be on. And I can't not read a little bit of this, because we might say, now how do we write in a way for children who are struggling to feel positive, or who, in this instance, this little girl's seriously ill? Like, what does that sound like? So I just want to read the first few pages of this one to give you a sense of how is it said? How has this author, Wenda Shorty, really brought to us this hope and assurance in this story? At the bottom of the garden grew an old pear tree, a home of buzzing and budding, scuttlers and flutterers, and tweets and squeaks. Beautifully illustrated again. We've got children in this delightful garden. One child about to swing on a tire swing in the tree. This tree was Anna's secret hideout, a climbing frame of adventure, a giver of rough and crinkled hugs, a promise of whoops and whispers. The wonder disappeared when the clouds rolled in. So we see now the pear tree, same swing, this little girl hugging that tree, and we see a dark sky. Rain fell, lightning cracked and pierced the sky. Heavy fog smothered the garden. Something was missing, like a night without stars, a smile without laughter, and a tree bare, standing against the cold. Then one day, soft, delicate arms returned for hugs. And so here we are, moving from the bare tree to where the tree is now blossoming again, but we now see the little girl is here, and we understand that this little girl now without hair is the same little girl we saw on that swing, and who has come through a season of cancer treatment. So when the sun appeared, friends read together, pausing to listen for the buzz of pollen-laden bees on the pitter-patter of petals on pages. And so we see our little girl here, little girl Anna, with friends coming to join her beneath that tree. So on it goes, beautifully illustrated, beautifully written. And using that one actually with some teachers the other day. Not one teacher who couldn't see that being used as a way to talk about that struggle and looking for the positive in times of difficulty, but said beautifully through that text.
That's a beautiful one.
Yes, Pair of Hope. Lovely. Once again, I'm just lining these books up here at the moment. You can see as publishers, they're very mindful of both of text and the illustrative style. This one, each of them have got different styles, of course, but they've got, they've all got very thoughtful, appealing ways of bringing the message to children through the illustrations as well. All right, next two fall into the category of environmental empathy. So this next one, called Growing Pains by Alison McLennan and Melissa Johns, talks about empathy, kindness, and caring for the environment. So in this story, a little boy called Finn, their family plants a tree in the backyard, and then he's worried that the little sapling might be cold, hungry, or lonely. So he tries his best to look after the tree, but when he finds himself alone and scared one night, it's that little sapling that he turns to. So this is a powerful story about the power of curiosity and kindness. And once again, this story, so here we have Finn, illustrated beautifully in this story, where he's doing lots of wondering through this book. So they've planted this tree. Do trees get cold? Finn wondered. Earlier that morning he'd shivered as he ran around in circles, pretending to be a fire-breathing dragon. His mother made him come inside when real smoke came out of his mouth. Rah! Now as Finn sat staring out of the window, trapped like a bear in a cage, he wondered if trees felt the cold. And so with each of his wanderings, he does something to fix that. So he finds a scarf to put around the tree, and then he wonders whether trees get hungry. So whilst he's eating breakfast, he wonders, can he share his breakfast? Do trees eat toast? Finn took what was left on his plate and ran outside. So he keeps going back out to the tree to help it. So there's real empathy, him trying to understand what the tree would be feeling like, and then it's thinking about when he's feeling some fear, about thinking about how that tree is coping and how that gives him strength to get through those same thoughts. So that one's called Growing Pains. So growing in his own thinking as a child, as that tree is doing its growing out in the yard. It's a nice way to connect to nature and care for nature, as well as using that as a way to understand more about himself.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Also in the environmental empathy category, I find this one a completely fascinating book because it's different again. So this one's called Where the Heart Is. What categories does this fit into? Environment, conservation, and friendship. Now, this one's fascinating because this is based on a true story, on a real event. So in 2011, Dindim, a Magellanic penguin, was washed up on an island village beach just outside Rio de Janeiro in Brazil near Joa's home. Since his rescue, Dindim has spent 8 months of every year with Joa, leaving in February for the Patagonian coasts of Argentina and Chile and returning in June. The trip back to Joa is an extraordinary 8,000 kilometres. or 4,970 miles. Scientists say they have never seen anything like it. This true story has inspired this book, Where the Heart Is. We see this map on the front page. So in this story, this is exactly what happened. On a beach in Brazil, a tiny penguin was washed ashore. He was covered in oil and so sick that he couldn't open his eyes. Old Joe found him and took him home. Then he wiped the sticky oil from the penguin's feathers and fed him sardines. He named him Din Dim. Every day Joe fed him sardines, and after a week Dim Dim was strong again. Joe took him down to the beach to say goodbye, but Din Dim didn't want to leave. Joe didn't want Dim Dim to leave either, but he knew that it was the way it must be. So he put Din Dim in his boat and rowed out to sea. The old man tipped the penguin into the ocean and sadly rowed back to shore. But as Joe walked up the sandy beach to his shanty, there was Din Dim waiting. He had beaten the old man home. Dim Dim flapped his wings in welcome. Joe roared with laughter. And then we continue with the story of all the things that they do together, but how Din Dim does eventually have to return to his colony.
Natural world.
To his natural world. But every year he returns.
Oh.
He returns.
True story?
It's a true story. Isn't that
beautiful.
just wonderful? So after being washed up and out of his environment, that care, that love, that friendship means that this penguin returns, this Magellan penguin returns to his colony and would go home to mate, but then returns 8,000 kilometres every year to the man who rescued him. I just think that's
Amazing.
An extraordinary and wonderful story.
Reminds me a little bit of the story of Greyfriars Bobby, a little Scottish terrier that when the master died, he visited that gravesite every day.
Is that fiction or is
true
that
story?
true story?
And a film was made of it.
Uh-huh. Who wrote that? Do we know?
No, I might find out. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So what you're reminding us there, of course, is that in all of these things, and I will have said this at the end, that there are stories for all of us to tell about. We find, so here, this author, Irma Gold, actually I don't think I mentioned, Irma Gold is author and Susanna Crisp is the illustrator, that stories can come from various places. They can come, this is the story of, this is based on a real story, and here someone has created it, or not, it's based on a real event, I should say, and someone has created this, brought to us so that we can learn more about our world and others through that story. All the other stories that I've talked about are really ones that let us know how important it is for us to know that we can put into story our feelings, things that scare us or things that make us feel any number of emotions. So the last two stories that I'll just talk about today, the category is creativity. And the two books here, first one is called The Boxcars by Robert Vescio, who wrote The Art of Words, and this one's illustrated by Cara King. Just love this one. There's two children, Kai and Liam, who have created out of cardboard boxes boxcars. So they've attached paper plate wheels to them and decorated them, and they love playing in the park with their boxcars. So strings over their shoulders. So this wonderful creativity. Then they're joined in the park by Eve, who desperately wants to join in with these playing with the boxcars. And so in a beautiful sign of friendship, and the 3 categories for this book are friendship, creativity and problem solving. So the 2 boys share the boxcar with Eve. So 2 of them, so Liam and Kai, share a boxcar, and Eve has, they give her a car so that she can enjoy that and join in with the play. But of course, 2 in one boxcar means that there's not really enough room, and the boxcar comes to grief. So we now have, we don't have the boxcars to play with. So much sadness ensues, of course, because they're now all, they can't keep playing together in that way. And of course, the problem solving comes when they find a whole stack of empty cardboard boxes, and the 2 boys decide that instead of making it into just a boxcar for each other, they make a box train. So the 3 of them, so that in that wonderful inclusivity, we've now got 3 children in the 3 carriages of the train. So such a beautiful story of, as we say, of creativity and problem solving and real friendship. Beautifully illustrated, beautiful language, lovely bit of repetition in that story. And once again, I'm sort of laying them all out here. When people see all of these as part of a collection, you can kind of get a real sense of, can you sort of see the style, Phil? They're all very welcoming, aren't they?
Mm. In fact, in our newsletter, I'll put some photos of groups of books so they can see the flavour.
Well, maybe in the categories even. And the last one that I want to share in this, out of these books today, they're not the only books that EK have on their website. It's just that these are the ones that, as I said, I thought, I think these are the ones that I want to bring to classrooms that I know. So the last one is called Up to Something, and this one is written by Katrina McKelvey and illustrated by Kiralee Lonergan. Father and son relationship, recycling, creativity, imagination and invention.
Wow.
So in this one we've got, Billy, he's so excited because he's finally been invited into Dad's shed where Dad does all his tinkering and creating and making, and so Billy thinks that they're now going to be working together on a building project. And then he's desperately feels let down because he's discovered that he isn't actually working on a project with Dad. He's just Dad's assistant by sweeping up and, doing all those things where we all start, really, because Dad's working with real tools, and the safest thing is for Billy not to be working with anything dangerous. So the joyful thing in this, though, is right next to, so Dad's working in the shed, Billy is also working in the shed, but he has found another whole set of materials to work with that are all safe. So he makes things out of washing baskets and pieces of wood and things that can be tied together rather than hammered together. Or so together, both of them end up making things, and then both of them realise how much more they could do by doing something together. So lovely way where the two of them come to a realisation of how that might be able to work as a partnership and safely. So Up to Something, great lot of imaginative, creative play, that whether the children were doing that with somebody or not, a lot of creativity to to thinking about what can be done even if we're not working with the big real tools. but how we can be creative and inventive with things, just those very basic things like string and tying things together. So just to make a final connection around those books, because I know the one thing that, so I'm saying, I've chosen all of these books really for that main reason, because they're all there to help us, because literature helps us to learn more about our world and ourselves and others. And these books really do intentionally do that. I think all books do, but I started off this session by saying that really I went on an intentional search for dealing with some of those things that sometimes in classrooms we want to be able to deal with, where we're thinking, how do we deal with, what if we're not feeling positive, or what if friendships are causing some challenges, or what if we are getting a little bit anxious about something. So these books, really let us get into some of those things in clear and intentional ways.
And in safe ways.
And in ways that, because books really are my default position when I think about, okay, when something's going on that I want to work with my class on, sometimes it's the book that just does that the best.
Yep.
So sometimes we'll also be thinking, all right, well, if I've brought a book to students, is it enough that we just bring the book? Are there more things that I should be doing with it? So I think, we want to be clear that we don't have to always do more with it, that it's enough for the book to do its work. We don't have to necessarily...
and let the children then ponder what the message is for themselves and how they're feeling about the book themselves.
Yeah.
And not have to respond. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think when we look at sort of the 4 categories that the Australian curriculum talks about when we bring literature to our children, the first category, literature and contexts, that's really about enabling students to learn more about their world, themselves and others, and getting ideas and viewpoints about events and issues and characters. So when we say literature and context, as the Australian curriculum is asking us to do, that's what these books, I think, are a really good example of, that they are bringing contexts for us to have viewpoints and ideas about. It's bringing us that. So the literature is doing that work. So what would we do with that? Just discussing that. What you said before, Phil, about letting children just ponder that. What questions are we opening up? I don't think we open up any questions other than, what did that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
What did you notice? What were you wondering? So I don't think we sort of need to, sometimes we think, do we have to get them making predictions? Do we have to get them making connections? I think we need to just open up and let children do that thinking, like we said in the title, by heart, from the heart. Then we can explore and discuss about what our understandings are and opinions and our preferences, and we can do that. That's part of responding to literature. So that's another category for the literature strand in the Australian curriculum, is responding to literature. But we just can do that by exploring and discussing. So to think about what were our personal ideas and experiences and opinions from that literary experience. Another of the categories is examining literature. And by doing that, by looking at characters and settings and experiences and what type of story it is, and looking at what language did the author use, what literary techniques did they use, that's really reading like a writer now. That's really thinking about how did that author, how did they bring that meaning and that message to us? So noticing those things, that's going to happen really too by opening up those questions of what have we noticed and what are we wondering about those things. And remember when I read like for Pair of Hope, the kind of language that used, thinking about what language, how does an author create message and meaning through using the kind of language that they do. And then we want our students to know that literature can afford them opportunities to tell their own stories in ways that bring meaning to others. So that our literature, so in Australian curriculum, in the literature strand, it's about creating literature. And by being able to see and have literature that really speaks to our affective, to our heart, that we can learn how we have got stories that can bring heart and understanding about the world and for other people to understand themselves and to understand others, that we can do that as a child. We can do that through story, and that we can bring, just like in Up to Something, Dad and the young boy in, making things together, that's a story that a child can tell through their eyes. The big things in their lives are the things that are worth writing about. The big feelings. When things go wrong, that they're things to write about. When things are sad, when things haven't worked out, that it's okay and it's safe to be able to write about those things if we're bringing that kind of literature to our students to share. Even down to, a story of, this penguin. When we hear stories, when we've heard people in our family talking about stories or interesting things, that they are things that are great things to share with others, and not only just about the, trying to remember what we might have done on the weekend or what we did or what something we would like to have when we're trying to persuade. Maybe it's some of these bigger things in life, because little lives have big things happening in them, and we want to open up and explore understanding more about those things.
And amazing to do it through quality literature.
Yes, and know that we can create our own, that our students can create that for themselves, that they're important messages to bring their peers, and an important process for them to be able to explore that about their own lives.
Rather than key questions today, Sharon, what would you like to talk about?
Well, we usually have as our last two questions about what tools have I been using in classrooms and what texts have I been using. But really that's what today has been about, that these as tools bringing that go looking intentionally for books, for those things that you want to address with students, and really expand that world into, that they're not always the same types of books, that sometimes we want to deal with the bigger things, and that we need to intentionally look for those things. I've always had a collection of books that I think deal with particular things, but I don't always know in any year what those things might be. So I think it's good to go looking for the kinds of literature that we can share with our students to really help them understand more really what it is to be human, what it is to be in this world, what feelings we have to deal with at times, what circumstances and experiences we sometimes need to deal with. And so literature can absolutely, help us, give us a pathway for our students to be able to get into those things. So when we find ourselves thinking about students in our class or events that are happening where we can go, what could we bring to that, and not just at it's sports day coming up, so we want a story about sports day, to think more about feelings and about empathy and about, these concepts and values of creativity and resilience and hope and things that can bring deeper levels of understanding to our students. So I'm not saying they have to fall into these categories or they have to be these books, but as part of our toolkit, our literature toolkit, there are times where we want to bring books like this to our students and to make some intentional choices about that at times, so that there'll be times where it will afford us well to go looking for that. Of course, librarians, if you've got librarian in your school, you are privileged, and that's just fabulous too, because they frequently know I'm looking for, and they'll know. If not, I'm saying I think it's worth going exploring for some of those things that you can bring to your children. And
probably your local library would have some great knowledge of what's out there.
Yes.
As well as exploring websites, publisher websites, going to the local bookshop.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Sharon. Fantastic today. And thank you, everyone, for being with us and for joining us on the podcast. Hope you got a lot out of it. The word teacher in another language today, Latvian, utilise. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.